All right, welcome everybody to Purposeful Patriarchs. I'm your host, Eman, and today we're going through again the Moynihan debunked. Previously I did an episode titled like the first Black podcast, and how after over 60 years we're still having the same conversation. So this is something that is happening. That's still happening amongst the Black community, whether it's the Black American community or the Black British community. Because I remember having these conversations when I was in college, which was a long time ago. So what we're going to do today is, as I've done through various videos on my channel, I've been using a historical report from the Department of Labour called the Moynihan Report. And what we're going to look at this morning, or today, is the broken Black families, and basically looking at the whether this Moynihan report was debunked, because there are several things that are still asserted amongst the Black community, in particular Black women, about the Moynihan report and whether it was really debunked. And there's things that I've answered in my long form videos, which you can see on the channel, where I basically explain some of these things, and I'll explain them in a shorter video like today, so that even if you don't have the opportunity or you don't want to, you can still catch my views on the Moynihan report in some of these smaller videos. So without further ado, let me play this particular clip here from this lady on Instagram. So let's just transition here and let's go.
How when people talk about poverty in the Black community, it always turns into a conversation about fatherless homes or broken families. Yeah, that wasn't on accident. That came straight out of a government report in 1965, written by a white man named Daniel Patrick Moynihan, and it changed how this country talked about us forever. Moynihan was working for the Department of Labor when he dropped this report. It was called The Negro Family, the Case for National Action, and it sounded like concern. It sounded like he wanted to help. But what he really did was develop a whole new way to blame us for what America did. He said the reason that Black people were struggling wasn't racism. It wasn't discrimination. It wasn't redlining. It wasn't underfunded schools or stolen wealth. He said it was our families, specifically Black women heading households. He said that Black poverty came from a tangle of pathology, like we were defective, like being poor was a moral issue, not a structural one. And that report made it all the way to Lyndon B. Johnson. It was used to justify cutting welfare programs, underfunding housing, and pushing the idea that if we just fixed the family, we could fix poverty. That's where the whole welfare queen myth came from. That's where Reagan got his talking points. That's where the whole personal responsibility narrative started. The same ones politicians still use to gaslight poor and working class people today. The Moynihan report didn't just get read, it got weaponized. Black leaders tried to stop it. James Baldwin called it out. The Urban League called it out. The NAACP called it out. But the government and the media loved it. Because language that sounded intellectual but still managed to blame us for everything. And that's why now, even 8 years later, you'll hear people fight, repeating his logic without realizing where it came from. The problem in our community is the home. The fathers need to come back. The problem is a system that broke our homes, and then the world that we were broken. By the 1980s, Reagan used that same framing to justify cutting social programs. By the 90s, he used it to push welfare reform. The 2000s, it turned into sound bites about family values. So when you hear people talk about single mothers, crime, or welfare, like voice and not circumstance, that's Moynihan's ghost talking. One report in 1965 that convinced America that our biggest problem was us. The Moynihan report wasn't just a study, it was a setup. It rewrote how the country talked about responsibility. It told America it didn't have to fix the system, they just needed to fix us. It's lies still echoing every time they say the problem in the Black community is the family. Because no, the problem has always been the system.
Okay, so I will stop there. So basically what I want to try and do is kind of break down some of these things that Ashley has dropped in a particular Instagram post. The first thing she talked about is the fact that the Moynihan report was done by Daniel Patrick Moynihan, and he was a white man, so therefore he shouldn't be able to talk about the black issue. What we have with these things is that we have to judge people by their honesty. So obviously I know that it's not black people that created racism, but there are black people out there who do want better for people. I do sincerely believe that. We debate whether that's the majority or the minority. I think it's there are many white people that do want better for black people, and I think Moynihan was one of those people. And he was trying to, I've said before, he's looking at as an economic problem as opposed to simply a racial issue, because the politics, similar to like the religion and faith, has changed and evolved since the 60s. And Moynihan wasn't a Democrat like we have today, who change people's genders and all these sorts of crazy things. He was simply a person who saw a problem, wanted to try and fix it, and try and understand to change it. But obviously, what he ended up doing was having a massive issue in this report. And yeah, it was quite astonishing what he came out with. And if you look into the background of Daniel Patrick Moynihan, he was actually an Irish immigrant, and he suffered from a broken family where his dad, I'm not sure if he was a drunkard, but he ended up leaving his mum. So his mum ended up becoming a single mother. She had to raise two boys, him and his brother. So he understood the issues of a broken family. So he tried to understand that for Lyndon B. Johnson, who was actually a very racist president of the United States. You can look into that and I might just at another time. But yeah, so Daniel Patrick Moynihan did have first-hand knowledge of a broken home system and the poverty that it creates. As I've mentioned in the Moynihan report before, that the Moynihan report did talk about the fact that poverty is from immigrants that come from a broken family structure. For a lot of immigrants came into America, they weren't recognised, and they had the system also broke them. But what the system did is the system made Irish, Jewish and Italian immigrants, they made them American, and they did that back people. They did fix the broken system. I talked about the liberty and equality. So black people free were no longer under slavery and Jim Crow, but they never got the equality. And what you look at there is the economic equality, because the other immigrants, the Jewish, the Italians, and the Irish, they gave them money to help actually book it. None of that was given to who actually in America for the longest. Now, this whole blame the victim issue is also a fascinating one, because even though I've said this countless times, is that if we read it has two very powerful important sections, and I believe this lady here, Ashley the Baroness, I will be very honest with you, I think she's Jewish and she's lying about and this is where you have to call these things out, whether it's a black man lying or it's a black woman lying. She doesn't talk about, which because there are people who are more knowledgeable than me who have extensively broken down the Moynihan report. I talk about Ken Clark book Social Dilemma, where the Moynihan report is broken. That is the extensive book on the Moynihan report is taken from Ken Clark, who actually aided Daniel Patrick Moynihan. So he's just a white man talking about this. He actually used a black American psychologist to actually inform and produce reports. Okay. And in that we do talk about the structural racism that broke the will of the Negro people. Okay, that is a quote that is actually specifically in the Tangle of Pathology. But the second chapter, I believe, is so the second or third chapter called "The Roots of the Problem." Okay, the roots of the problem, okay, is where they talk about the structural systemic racism. It breaks down the slavery and the racism as a component. Okay, because slavery was practiced all across the world, but only in America did they codify racism into law. Okay, they made your black skin color, your brown skin color, in the law as a tactic of discrimination. Okay, so in the Moynihan report, the Moynihan report never debunked. Okay, the Moynihan report was never debunked. Okay, and in the Moynihan, they did talk about structural racism. Okay, racism, which took out strong father, and it made the black woman the stable center of the family. And that's what she never, and this is why the blaming of the victim is such a cop-out, okay, because the report does not blame the victim necessarily. It talks about the problem, which is the cause. Okay, so if you want a summary, look at the problem of the report, you can see that the cause of. Okay, then angle of pathology, which is a phrase that was coined from Kenneth's Club Dark Ghetto, is the effects of the roots of the problem. Okay, so as in society, there is a cause and there is an effect. Okay, the effect of slavery and racism, Jim Crow and segregation and marginalization, because I talk about these three particular components. I talk about broken the structure of the black family. Okay, I look at them as a particular to explain everything that's gone on in America, and that's why I use the books. Okay? So you see the cause of the broken family, and then you see the effects. Okay, and that's where we talk about the culture that has that been caused because of the slavery and the racism, the integration, and the marginalization. Okay? So yeah, blaming of the victim. They did report. I will repeat. They did on the slavery, the racism, the Jim Crow, and the segregation. So she's actually lying. Okay, and I don't say that. Okay? So going on to the next part, is whether fix the family, does that help black people? The answer to that question is unequivocally yes. Okay, and I think the reason why I say that is because we as people, we only get so far trying to go against this. Okay, the system in America and Britain is your dominant society. Okay? There are more than they have the institutionalism. It's not just saying a particular name. Okay? It's about the power of that discrimination. Okay, the power to stop you from building a family, the power to stop you from having a job, the power to stop you from a house, all the things which a family needs. Okay, so that's why it is institutional, it is systemic. Okay, so therefore, if black men and black women come together and build a family, because they have that structure, because once you get married, once you have children, once you build a community of those groups of people, therefore you can demand more change from the dominant society. But if the culture is broken, everybody is doing as individuals, you do not have strength to change the power that is on top of you, the power that is present. Okay? And that's why I think this is such an important question. And sadly, because of the effects of the slavery and the racism, that black culture is still atomized. And this is why a lot of black women are still choosing to have children out of they're choosing not to get married, because the psychological culture, which is a moynihan report, psychological culture, it reinforces itself for generations. And then you see the pattern of where they promote education and get more jobs, all these things, all of that stuff broken down in the moynihan. These patterns are still with us today. This stuff is not new, and it's not, and we don't like. Nobody likes that. This is the truth, but we know something fundamentally wrong with unity, and that comes down to part is also black. And there's also a massive part of black because they are still in all other groups. Okay, and this is where it's about the cause. Okay, in all other groups, having a matriarchal culture, in a patriarchy that is, you can go against the dominant white society as women, but men can. And this is the fundamental thing why they will not, the power structure will not do anything to help men. And what trying to change. He was looking at it and thinking, you need to economically empower these men so that they can have the dignity of man, they can then be husbands, and then they can actually lead their family, fix this broken culture. But because of the whole blatant, okay, this shut down all. During this period, there was like the Watts riots, there was feminism, sexual liberation, contraception, all these different things were coming out. So there were a lot of destabilization factors that were happening around this time. So there were so many things going on when this came out. You know, I've not even spoken about welfare. Okay? So do the blatant have to take responsibility? We'll talk about statistics. This day, I think, in the Moynihan report, it says that 1 out of 4 children were out of wedlock. Okay, 75% then. Okay. 1 out of 4 out of wedlock. Today is 6% that are out of wedlock. That's something that the white people can control. It's just saying, okay. And then the flip side to that is, are black men the ones creating those children? So 54%. Sorry, is it 54? Is it 54% of, or is it 60? 54 or 56%? 50% of black men are single and childless, so they do not have children. Okay, when we're talking about broken families, the majority of men do not have children, okay, and they are single, so they cannot be the issue. Okay, and this is why when black women say that they want married, then why are they having children? Okay? And this is where I am very critical on the behaviour and the mating pattern of black women. Okay? So knowing that, okay, the moynihan report is true and debunked. Why are the things a strong matriarchal culture still with us today? Why is there still a strong culture? Black women can say whatever they want about black men, and there's no recourse, whether it, and that's a recourse based on this, because they cannot be deadbeat fathers when the majority of black men do not have children. Okay? Most black men do not have children, so how can they be fathers? Okay? So these are some of the things that women have to take responsibility. Black men also need their image cleaned up. Black women say bad things about them that are not true. That affects how the society sees them, especially when it comes to things like from economic and health. Today, you don't see black men advocating for black men to get jobs, to get an education, okay? Which again, if you don't do that, how can you complain 10, 15, 20 years we don't have economically empowered men, okay? So all of these things are so important, okay? And you do need to, fix these issues, and it starts with black men actually marrying for a long time with them. Marrying black women, but I don't think that's the case, because you can't start families with and the majority of black women are smart, and the black men shouldn't be there to cover up the mistakes of black women chosen to have children out of wedlock. And black men actually taught the next generation of daughters and sons and tell them to actually choose lesbian and make sure that they have children until those young boys are educated, have and actually can build families. So I will leave it there. Thank you very much for listening. Drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you find this information interesting. But from my perspective, the moynihan report wasn't debunked. Let me see if I can share this with you, which is something I brought up.